Hello, folks, and welcome to another edition of Helium Hacks Happy Hour. My name is Travis. I go by TT on Discord. I'll be your host today. So, can everyone hear me okay? Cool. So I see we have some new folks here, but if this is your first time, I ask that you do unmute, introduce yourself, so you meet, some of the other folks developing on the Helium network here. And this is a very casual call. It's very informal, and so feel free to jump in at any time. We do have a couple of very special guests tonight, so I think we're gonna have a good show, and been really excited about this one. And I know a lot of folks have as well who have been doing RF mapping, propagation maps, and in addition to setting up your hotspots or gateways. See if I can get. We did switch to a 1 hour earlier format this week to try to accommodate more of our European friends here. So hopefully this works out for everyone. If not, I don't know. Hit me up, leave a comment, talk about it here in a minute. This also means that we have a new link. So the link should be updated within the events channel and on your Google Calendar or whatnot. I tried to make it easy, but if there were any problems with that, please let me know. But with that, I'm gonna just throw it out there. Welcome to Helium Hacks, folks, and new people. I want to hear from you. Who's here?
Travis, you changed the goddamn link on me, man.
I know, and I also changed the time, and I basically messed everything up. But hopefully, and I did put this to a couple of different votes, at least on straw poll type votes on the Discord, and so hopefully this time will be a little more, suitable for people where it was getting a little late. I mean, some of these calls have run like 4 some plus hours, depending
Right.
on
In
what's
my
going on.
opinion, the this hour works better.
Okay. No, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. This works okay for me. It's still towards the kind of the end of, I guess, business, the range of, close of business here. And so most of my meetings are done at this point. And so if the show does need to run longer, it shouldn't really be a problem on my end. But hopefully that means we can have some more European friends, sticking around and participating in this call. So. But yeah, the links change. So if you had it bookmarked, or if you, or otherwise, just go to the events channel on Discord, and it will have the updated one. And I know, like I say, you've been busy as hell lately, so I'm glad you took some time to drop in today. It's going to be a great talk. Like I said earlier. Just to give a quick, if anyone didn't see what's going on tonight, we're going to have the guy behind Helium Vision, and Nick and Alex from over at Cloud RF are going to be talking about a tool that they have worked on together. Cloud RF is a tool that's used by Helium Vision, and it allows you to get really, really cool RF propagation maps based around your hotspot deployments. And so if you're wanting to maximize which I guess everyone does, your HNT coming in that's being mined from your gateways, hotspots, you're going to want to check this out. It should be very, very cool tonight. But I guess at this point, let's go ahead and jump into this. If you guys are ready, Nick, are you and Alex both on the call, ready to kind of explain what the hell you guys are doing here?
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
Cool. Do we have Alex with us?
Yeah.
Ready.
All right.
Okay, perfect. You should be able to, I believe, take control of the screen. There we go. I guess I gave you a quick introduction earlier, but if you want to kind of, go over who you are, what you're doing, what the use of what these tools that you're building are, and I'll hand the mic over to you guys.
Yeah, sure thing. So my name's Nick. On Discord, I go by Boise Brewer. And I'm the developer for Helium Vision. And Travis already introduced Alex. Alex is the owner, developer, brains behind Cloud RF. And so as we get into the RF simulation portion, Alex may jump in and answer any questions that you guys have relative to the actual RF modeling. but a bulk of what we'll be talking about is related to Helium Vision. So we'll just touch on it as needed. And hello there, Sam. If you guys have questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'll try to address them as we go. But if I miss them, I'll try to circle back. And I'm happy to stay on as long as it takes to answer as many questions as there are. So what's Helium Vision, or what's the purpose of Helium Vision? The primary use case is for managing hotspot placement. And you know, that has a lot of different factors or variables that go into that, and it can get complex. And then on top of figuring out where you might want to put it, then once you've decided where you're going to put it, keeping track of that. So that's probably at this point the primary use case for Helium Vision, but we'll touch on kind of a lot of complementary parts or parts that intertwine. Well, everybody can see the screen, yeah?
Yeah,
no.
yeah. Let's go over here, man.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So first, we'll just kind of get oriented with the interface. Here on the top, you've got a search bar. You can search by address. You can search by lat long. You can search by physical address. And I should clarify, when I say address, I meant like hotspot address. So it's reasonably flexible. And when you search, you'll get your results grouped by the type. And so if we, start typing in something here, it groups these ones by physical addresses. And then if we were to get, let's see, what was it? So if you type something that returns a hotspot name, it'll group those results accordingly. So here we're getting some places and some hotspots. Then over on the right are your primary objects that you're tracking. So hotspots, regions, placements, and newly released devices. We just released that today. And I'll touch on devices, but I'm going to save those for last. They're certainly important, but not the kind of meat and potatoes of what we'll be going over today. Then over on the left is your toolbar. And here at the top, your kind of default select tool would be to select a specific hotspot. Then your region tool, distance measuring tool, placement query. That's probably the most important tool to wrap your head around. And then down here, you've got your map layers. You can switch the style of the map. Pretty common feature. I think most applications that have mapping expose that. And then your layer manager. This one's super important. And so you'll want to be familiar with this. This is how you can toggle the different layers on and off from the map. And as we continue to add functionality, this is where that functionality will likely land. If you are looking at an item and it has the little eye/icon, that means you can hide it. And so, we have online hotspots that we're seeing right now. If we toggle those off, they hide, and then click them to bring them back up. Inspected items. So anytime that you have a single object focused on, so a hotspot, a wallet, a region, a placement, a device, anything like that, anytime that you have a single one selected, we'll click on one there, that would be considered an inspected element. And so now you'll see we're inspecting a single hotspot, therefore the color is yellow. And if we were to come in here and change the color, we should see the color of that hotspot change. Cloud RF. So once you've run a simulation, you're going to see that layer, the simulation layer over whatever object you've run the simulation for. And at times you actually don't want to see that. So you can hide the cloud RF layer as well. Once we kind of get into a deep dive in terms of tracking objects, if you come in here, you can visualize all of your tracked objects simultaneously, which is actually a pretty handy feature. And when we get to regions, you'll see where it's really practical. And then lastly, the H3 grid, resolutions 6 through 10. A question I get quite a bit is like, hey, when I'm got my resolutions turned on, I don't see anything, right? I just turn on resolution 8, but I don't see anything. In order to see the grid, you have to have either a hotspot selected or a placement query dropped. And so if we go back and select one of these hotspots, you'll see the grid pop up. And then once you have a hotspot or a placement inspected, you can enable as many of the layers as you want.
And for those, Nick, that are a little unfamiliar with what you mean by these grids, could you just quickly kind of what's the purpose of these?
Sure. Yeah. So the H3 grid is a geospatial indexing protocol or format, I would say, that was developed by Uber, and it helps to be able to analyze the globe, right? Because it's a sphere, and so it's challenging to try to analyze. So Uber came up with this hexagon format, and in particular, Helium uses that for computing reward scale, and so that it becomes very important when you're considering hotspot placement, where you're placing them relative to other hotspots in the different hexes. One of the layers I kind of breezed right past, but helps visualize that, is the average reward scale layer. So I'll turn off the online hotspots for a second, and we still have one inspected, which is why it's still showing up. So if we come up here and close out of that, that one will disappear. And let's fly over to San Francisco real quick, because that one helps to visualize the average reward scale layer really well. So if we turn that on, you'll see the heat map, right? The blue that we have selected as our color is 1.0, and then anything less than 1.0 starts to fade to a darker color of blue, that's just because that's the one we have selected. But, so you can see here, when we get into San Francisco, where there's some more densely packed areas or hexes, the reward scale has dropped below 1. And so now if we turn our online hotspots back on, you can actually kind of visualize the density. The one out here, there's just a single hotspot, but then you get in here and there's quite a few. So it makes sense as to why it's scaled down. So we'll turn that off. Next tool here is the line of sight tool, and I'll wait to cover that. I just wanted to kind of orient us with the toolbar. The bottom left, here's a full demo similar to what we're doing today, but it's a video that was recorded with Gristle King from Discord. So go check out that blog post if you like, and you can reference that demo as well. Here's a link to the Helium Vision Discord channel. Here's a link to our YouTube channel, which basically anytime I'm releasing a new feature now, I make a quick 1 or 2 minute video explaining the new feature, and those are all there on YouTube. Then a few kind of lesser used tools down here. So this one will center on your location based on where the browser thinks that you are. If you have not enabled the geo permissions, then I think it goes off your IP address. So it's not always super accurate, but if you click on it, it'll fly to where it thinks you are. It happens to think that I'm down in Arizona, but that's not accurate. I'm up in Boise. The other tool right here, it's flatten orientation. So if we've kind of zoomed in and maybe we've pivoted to kind of look at terrain or something, sometimes you want to get back to flat. So you can either click on this icon, or if you notice next to flatten orientation, there's an F that indicates that F is the keyboard shortcut to accomplish the same thing. So if I pivot again, and then I hit the F key, it flattens back out. And just about everything over here has a keyboard shortcut. So if you just look for whatever the key is that's between the brackets, that'll tell you what you're looking for. All right, so now let's hop into the top nav bar, where we're gonna go over our tracked objects. And so we'll start with hotspots. That's kind of the base of it. Here I have 5 tracked hotspots in no particular order. These aren't my hotspots, and they don't all belong to the same wallet. I just randomly picked 5 for the purpose of this demo. You can click on any one of them to zoom in. So we'll click on Suave Opal Seal, and it's going to fly to that specific hotspot. And then you can see a bunch of information about it. So the address, which wallet it belongs to. You can hop over to Helium Explorer to look at some of the data that they have there that we don't have here. Online, offline status, current reward scale, lat long, elevation, and then newly added to the blockchain, which is kind of cool, is elevation and gain. And so you're not going to find that for every hotspot. As an example, the elevation is not set for this hotspot. It actually requires the owner of the hotspot to assert that information on the app, which luckily we can do that remotely. But for all the hotspots that were deployed prior to this being added to the blockchain, they probably don't have that information. It's kind of slowly trickling out as owners go back and update it. Now would be a great time to hop into an RF simulation, since that's kind of next on down our list. So we have our hotspot inspected. And if we wanted to, we could just click on generate RF simulation and it will use all the default values. But let's go ahead and toggle those advanced values so that we can walk through them. So we are in North America for this particular hotspot. So we've already got the correct frequency selected. You can decide what radius you want. And there's been some questions that have gone back and forth in the Helium Vision Discord channel about how big of a radius to set. And certainly there's a personal preference there, but the larger the radius, the longer the runtime for the model. And so I've kind of given myself a 5,000 to 10,000 meter threshold when I'm looking somewhere that's maybe more suburban. When I'm in, say, San Francisco or Seattle, you know, a more populated city, I might scale it down to 3,000 to 5,000 meters. There doesn't feel like a need to make the radius really large because generally speaking, the coverage isn't going to make it that far. The buildings and the terrain are generally blocking it. But if you run a simulation and you find that the edge of the simulation is very close to a perfect circle, then you know that you can extend the radius a bit. So I'll throw a 10,000 meter radius on this one. We'll set the height above ground to say 3. So maybe it's like a 1-story house and somebody's putting it on the top of the shelf or something. We'll leave the antenna gain at 1.2, and this is actually being populated from this gain field, right? So when we inspected this hotspot, the gain data came through, and so it auto-populated the antenna gain for us. The environment, you will select based on your knowledge of the area. In this case, I'm going to say this is suburban, and I'll leave this at standard, and we'll go ahead and generate that. And it usually takes a few seconds. If you are doing it on a tracked hotspot or a tracked placement, you can navigate away and come back, and when the simulation's done, it'll be there immediately. We'll go grab one of my hotspots up in the foothills. So we'll take a look at this one, and we'll do the same. Oh, I already ran a simulation on that one. So you'll notice, as I said earlier, if you've run a simulation previously, when you come back to your tracked object, it'll automatically be there. In this case, I actually am not tracking this hotspot, but the system knows that I've run a simulation on that hotspot. And of course, if I tracked it, then it gets added to my hotspot list. Because that simulation already existed, it shows up immediately, and it doesn't, each time I come back to see it, I don't have to rerun the simulation, right? It's stored. And when I was talking earlier about radius, you'll notice that this is a pretty well-defined circle, right? So if we wanted to, we could come in here and we could crank that radius up if we wanted to kind of see the extent of where it would get. I'm happy with where we're at on this one, but that is maybe one of the examples where you would want a larger radius. And I think I've got it capped at 50,000 meters. My friend Neil over there, he's always trying to like peg it to see what it'll do. Thanks, Neil. That is kind of the basics of an RF simulation. And you can do those both on existing hotspots or on placements. Thus far, we've been using the select tool, right? So that's how we've been selecting the individual hotspots. So here's the list of the hotspots that I have tracked. If we open one of them up and look at, there's a couple fields in particular that are important. The online, offline status and the reward scale. So people have asked, well, you know, why might you want to track hotspots? You know, there's other applications, the official Helium application. I know Helium also sends online, offline notifications. But one notification that's different is when your reward scale changes. So any hotspot that you're tracking, every time we do a sync, we are indexing the reward scale. So this one's currently 1.0, and let's say that another hotspot moved in right next to it and it triggered the reward scale to drop. We would receive an email letting us know, hey, your reward scale was 1.0, but now it's less than 1.0. Probably the primary difference in our hotspot tracking versus maybe some of the other systems' hotspot tracking. It's not hugely valuable, but it kind of made sense that we put it in place since hotspots are such an integral part of the system. So we'll move over to the next object, which is regions. I've already got a few regions here that I've tracked for the demo. And so the way that we create those is with the region tool up here. And one of the things that I think people maybe miss with the layer manager and is really, really valuable is the ability to see all of your tracked objects simultaneously. So if we come into our layer manager and we turn off our online hotspots, we almost have like a blank canvas. So now we could turn on all our tracked hotspots, in which case we're seeing just the hotspots that we have tracked here. And then we can do the same thing with regions. And so in this case, we've got these 3 regions that I have tracked here. And so now with my region tool, if I say, all right, now I'm going to come in here and I want to draw one in Eagle. Now I can click track, give it Eagle, and save it. And there's been questions kind of like, what would the purpose of regions be for? And I personally think of it kind of strategically. If you're trying to develop the network in a particular area and you want to know when hotspots are being added or removed from an area, that's exactly what regions are for. So you define the areas that you want to keep an eye on. And again, anytime a hotspot is added or removed, you'll receive an email notifying you which region and the hotspot that was added. It doesn't, I don't think currently it tells you which hotspot was removed for that notification. It just tells you which region it was. If we go open up Eagle, now it zooms in, shows us which 2 are in there, also shows us the size of the area. One of the things about the area, almost anytime that you see units of measure, that can be toggled between imperial and metric. I have left mine to metric, but almost everywhere you can utilize whichever your setting is. Currently the only place that you can't is in the RF simulation where it's all metric. So that covers regions. So now placements, and we'll turn off our track regions layer. And placements is where you want to put a hotspot, right? So we're trying to evaluate a potential placement. And similar to what we just saw with hotspots and regions, we can turn on our tracked placements layer. And so this shows us all our placements simultaneously, which is a pretty slick feature. Another feature that it's in the backlog, I'm not sure when we'll get to it, but very similar to this is being able to turn on all of your past simulations. So if you had run a simulation for all of these, you'd be able to get kind of a visual overlap of those RF simulations. I think that will be slick. So we'll turn off our tracked placements and we'll grab our placement tool and we'll just go drop a new one. And let's see, let's pick somewhere up in here. So I happen to know this is in a valley. And so when we run our RF simulation, we should get some interesting visuals there. One thing that has also come up in the question is like, hey, what's the difference between this radius at the top and this radius that's within the RF simulation parameters? And the first one up here is going to grab your neighboring hotspots and index them. So if we go back and turn on our online hotspots layer, we'll see we've got a handful of hotspots in the neighborhood. So if we extend this radius, now it's indexing here at the bottom any of the neighboring hotspots. And so that notification system, similar to the other objects, when a hotspot is added or removed, the same will happen. If a hotspot gets added within that radius, you'll get an email, or if a hotspot is removed from that radius, you'll get an email. So this one is used exclusively for that. Then in terms of your actual RF model, that happens within here. And again, kind of the same rule of thumb that I use is 10,000 for this particular scenario. Everything else looks fine to me. Say rural, organic, and standard, and generate that. So we'll let that run. And when that comes back, we should see that we're right in the middle of a valley. We get kind of an interesting pattern that shoots out this way, but we shouldn't get anything on the left and the right. There we go. Which I absolutely love this RF overlay with the 3D, with the terrain. It's just really, really impressive. I lost my chat. All right. I'm just trying to catch up to see if there's any questions. So Travis asked, if you rerun a simulation with a larger radius, is that the one that will be retained? Yeah, so currently the last simulation that you run on any given tracked object is the one that's retained. And then there was a question about region limits, and yes, they have limits. It's 100 square miles, or I believe it's 233 square kilometers. Here is that RF simulation, and just for the sake of showing you guys tracking a new placement, I'll come up here and I'll hit track, and we'll call this Bogus Basin Road. And then recently we just added a score variable. That was something that was asked by one of our customers, and this is currently just for you to track internally. So you know how you weight your own placements or grade your own placements, that's at your discretion. We'll be adding scoring of our own to help you kind of determine where you want to stick placements, but that isn't out yet, so it's certainly at your discretion. I will say that when we deploy it, 0 will be the lowest and 100 will be the best. So if you end up using your own, maybe keep that in mind. You can kind of track notes for a placement. This is all internal, just for you, of course. Nobody else is seeing your placements. The street address, or physical address, I should say. And then we can hit save. And now that placement will show up in our list. And so we've got Bogus Basin Road right here. And then here's a handful of other placements that I had done earlier in the day. And so now if I flatten the map back out, we can come over here and turn on our tracked placements again. And we get to see those kind of overlaying circles. Some other features related to placements that we recently released, I think last week. You can download and export a CSV file with all of your placements. You can then edit that CSV. So maybe you want to go through and edit all the addresses at once. Maybe you want to go do your scoring. You know, there's of course lots of things that you may choose to edit, but then you can turn around and import that same CSV file. And as long as you leave the UUID column in your export, when you import it, it will just update the existing placements. It won't create new ones. And then of course, if you have a row in your CSV that doesn't have a UUID, it's going to create a new placement. Here's the template. So if you want to download CSV template and then not auto-populate, but manually populate it because you don't have any placements in the system yet, there's the template for it. And here's a button to delete all your placements. It will ask you to confirm it, but once you do it, they're gone. I can't help you. So play carefully with that one. Let's go grab our distance measuring tool. So over here, we've got our kind of ruler. So if we drop a pin here, and then we come over somewhere in this area and drop another pin, and you'll see in the bottom right, we have kind of the parameters for, or the output for drawing that line. But here we also have a line of sight profile. So if we turn off our layer manager and then turn this on, we can actually see a profile of the terrain. And then here is a slider for the start point, and here is a slider for the end point. So the sliders default to the ground elevation at the points that you drop those pins, but that may not be the transmitter elevation, right? You might have bumped that up. So in this case, you know, you could try to get your antenna a little bit higher off the ground, in which case you've now cleared this part of the terrain, and it looks like you'd have to get pretty far above on this side in order to clear the terrain over here.
And that's going to be in meters that you would be adding on top of that number on each end?
If your settings are in metric, if they are imperial, then it will be in feet.
Excellent, thank you.
And when somebody had asked about that before, it's like, hey, if I come in here and I change my setting from metric to imperial, the numbers aren't updating. You just have to close the line of sight tool and reopen it, and it'll switch the unit of measure. All right.
So quick question, like line of sight, just because terrain may be going up doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to have access from point to point on those. It means you're going to have some interference, or I guess, between those, some levels of attenuation.
Yeah, certainly. And this is where I would defer to Alex and some of you more experienced RF wizards, because I am a software geek, not an RF geek. So a lot of this stuff is new to me. but I did have somebody ask in a previous demo about that, and they actually sent a pretty helpful diagram that shows kind of how the line of sight profile works. So actually, Alex, you want to chime in on that one? You might have better input.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. The path profile tool that you're seeing at the moment is pretty basic in that it's just looking at the terrain and any obstructions. The next tool will be using the CloudRF API so that you're looking at more than just terrain. You're looking at clutter or buildings on top of the terrain, as well as the Fresnel zone. So that actual cone of power, not just the straight beam that's around the link. So you can see where that's obstructed, how high you need to get your sites in order to clear the Fresnel zone, for example. And like you said, Travis, just because something's obstructed doesn't mean that you can't communicate. So using a propagation model will actually show you the received signal power versus the Boolean yes, no answer.
That's great.
All right. And I'm not quite certain when we're going to be making that switch, but as Alex indicated, once we do that, we'll actually be able to visualize the clutter along the profile as well, which will be a huge addition. I think that's going to make it a lot more powerful. Somebody in the chat asked about the on-demand simulations. So for every plan, you get a certain amount of simulations. In this case, I am just using a trial count, so there's no simulations included. Today, we just released the API keys and the devices, which I think that was Travis pinging me about. So here you'll see your API request usage for the month and your simulation usage for the month. And in this case, my plan, because it's a trial, doesn't include any. And so I had the ability to purchase on-demand RF SIM credits. And the question was, if you purchase them, do they roll over? And the answer is yes. So anytime that you're making a simulation request, if you have credits available that are associated with your monthly plan, it will use them first. And then when you've hit your cap, it will roll over into the on-demand credits. And then as soon as the month ticks over and your monthly quota renews, it'll go back to using those and back and forth and so on. So yes, they roll over. The one caveat, which I put it here in yellow and somebody still managed to miss it, if you're on the trial and you buy credits, they're only going to be accessible while the trial is active. And if you hit the end of your trial, you're not going to have access to those credits anymore. So be careful, right? Don't buy more than you think you need if you're not planning on subscribing, because you'll lose them. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I think we're clamoring for the devices demo. So as I said before, we just added devices today. They're also showing up here in the list. So now if I open this up, we've got a couple links here. The Helium developer kit, I just wanted to plug that for Travis. Super, super cool kit. I got mine, but I still haven't even had a chance to integrate it yet, but I'm really excited to. But I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a Glamos Walker. I think Slavin is in here. He was on Hacks in the last few times and demoing this super, super cool field tool. So I'll plug this for a second. You can take this out in the field and once it's got a GPS signal, you can broadcast a packet in many different ways. You can send a single packet, you can send multiple packets, different spread factors, very, very configurable all on the device. Then you can configure Helium Vision to catch those, right? And we'll get into why that's super powerful here in a minute. Helium Vision, we're actually going to give one of these away on Friday to one random subscriber. So if you're not subscribed and you want a chance to win this, all you have to do is subscribe for a month. There's no obligation to be subscribed for any length of time. You could subscribe and then immediately cancel and you would still be eligible. You know, if you cancel right away, you still get your full month of usage. But we're going to give this away on April 30th, and you'll be able to define which model you want, whether you want US or you want the Europe model. And let's see, Travis just said dev kits are in the rack store now, and they'll be back in stock at Parley Labs soon. So check that out if you are so inclined. If we were going to add a new device, we would come up here, click on add device, give it whatever name you want, and then put in your device EUI. And this is required, and it's important because that's how Helium Vision knows how to associate the inbound uplinks from the Helium console. And so if we back out, because I already have one, when you're setting up your first device, you'd want to go in here to your console integration docs, and this is going to walk you through all the steps to get your device up and running. So the first item you got to do is create an API key. Here's a link to do it. There's also a link here in the user dropdown. Add your device within the devices tab, which I just showed you the form, but I already have one, so I'm not going to worry about doing that again. And then here's the step within Helium console. So hopefully if you're doing this, you already have a little bit of familiarity with the Helium console. If not, it's not terribly complicated, but there's a few steps that you'd have to walk through. I don't outline all of them. I only outline the console integration, but there's good docs on how to do that through Helium. In particular, you're going to be using an HTTP integration. It's a post. Here's the URL. You need to add a few headers. Here's my test API key. And this is kind of what your Helium console integration should look like when you're done. So your link, and then in your authorization, you need bearer and then your API key. And then for your decoders, you can use, of course, whatever decoder you want. I've got a few sample ones here, one for Glamos and one for quite a few rack devices, actually. The 7200, the 7204, I think. So you can play with those. But the important part is the payload that gets returned needs to return the data in this format. And you don't have to return all of it. You just return the data that you need. So, you know, if your device doesn't have any environmental parameters, then you wouldn't send any of that back, right? If you're using a Glamos or some other GPS device, you're going to be looking at your position data. Something that reports battery voltage, you'd be sending back that. So just know that if you write your own decoder, this is the format that you need to send it back in. So we'll hop up to devices, and just to kind of touch, yeah, and Travis just mentioned that there is a Helium GitHub repo that has a section with console decoders. I haven't actually added these there yet. I will. And each time, I know some people have said they would send me their decoders for their other devices once they've made them that has the correct Helium Vision payload. I'll add those there, and then I'll also send a pull request so that we can get those in the official Helium repository. So I just want to talk for a minute about devices. You know, there's certainly some valuable application from a network planning perspective, right? So we're trying to figure out where we're going to put our devices, and we can use something like the Glamos to go out and field test a location before we deploy a hotspot. And that's certainly valuable. And we'll actually show that here in a minute. But that's the health of the network in the long run, right? We want to have this device be this network be adopted and utilized by companies. So Helium Vision over the long run is going to continue to build tools that are for that use case as well, right? So it's not just for host management and planning, but also for companies that want to consume the network, and that's kind of where devices started segueing into the product. But we'll continue to see features driven around devices and uplinks in the coming months. So let's hop into our device. So I've got my Glamos Walker here. With the Glamos, this next little bit isn't as relevant, but I'm going to explain it anyway because it is very relevant for other devices. When you receive an uplink, you may not receive all the parameters at the same time. And if I have an environmental sensor as an example from rack, and it tracks a handful of parameters, but you might only get 1 out of 5 at a time because the device is trying to break those packets up to be very small. And so when you're looking in this latest state block, you're seeing the combination of all of the latest uplinks that contain unique keys, right? So if we were using that air quality sensor as an example, temperature might have come from the last uplink, but pressure might have come from the second to last uplink. And yet both the values would show up here. Somebody else said it would be nice if the format for the API is compatible with Helium, Mapper, and Cargo. I would have to go look at that. I'm not actually sure what format that they're utilizing. So I'll have to go take a look at that. So kind of to get to, I think one of the really cool features of integrating devices with placements and network building is now that we have a device that has a GPS payload, if you guys were kind of peeking over my shoulder as I was talking, there's a link here to create a placement query. And so that's taking this payload data, and you can do that for any of your uplinks. So what's the practical application? Well, I take my Glamos out in the field and I go from place to place to place that I want to test, and I trigger an uplink. And then I can come back to the office and I can open up these uplinks, and then I can click on that and I can create a placement query from that specific uplink. So I'm going to have the exact lat long of where I was standing, and I can do that for any of them, right? So it's like, okay, well, right there I was standing at Bogus Basin Road, and then here I was standing at Table Rock on the Mesa. And here I was standing down by the river. So you can see where this would be really, really powerful to go spend a day in the field and create several uplinks, and then be able to come back and decide where you want to run a placement. And then of course you saw on one of them, the one that was up at Table Rock, when I clicked on create the placement query, I had actually already run an RF simulation from that point. And so it already showed up. I didn't need to rerun it. Travis, I burned through
That's
that.
killer, man. I mean, seriously, that's killer. And I've used the Glamos in field, and of course, I mean, I've spoken with you about this, and used this, same workflow in Helium Vision, and it's just powerful. I mean, it makes things so much easier.
Yeah, I've been really excited to get this released. I know a handful of the mods and Travis have been helping me test this so that we could make sure when we released it, it would be powerful and useful. And so thanks to those guys, which both mods are in here. So thanks guys for helping with that.
All my going yesterday.
All right,
No
yeah.
worries.
And I hope you guys find it useful. Certainly excited to get some feedback. I know there's still quite a bit to do, even as it pertains to just visualizing what we see here. So right now, devices, they don't show up on the map at all, which is kind of counterintuitive considering everything shows up on the map. So I will get a layer in place where you can visualize devices that have GPS. Of course, a device like an environmental sensor that doesn't report GPS will need to do basically a manual positioning where you just assign a fixed lat long, and then we can render it on the map. And then also the ability to inspect uplinks, right? Like if I click on this, I should be able to see it on the map even before I choose to create that query placement. So bear with me. I know there's certainly some more stuff that we can flush out relative to this devices and uplinks feature, but I hope that you find this first iteration to be reasonably useful. One thing that is not, I have only witnessed it once or twice, but if you take your device out and it gets picked up by multiple hotspots, and you have your console configured in a way that allows multiple hotspots to process the packet, then you'll see each of the hotspots here. So it shows up as a list, and each hotspot that witnessed your packet will have, of course, the respective payload data, frequency, RSSI, SNR spreading, et cetera.
And I do have to say that, Nick, man, you have been absolutely phenomenal as far as, response times to both the Discord community and, myself personally on, feedback on features here. So I really do appreciate that. I mean, it's been great.
Yeah, thank you. I've really enjoyed getting involved in the community, and this has been a fantastic project. I've really enjoyed working on it, and I appreciate it. I also want to say thanks to everybody who's given positive feedback. Sometimes software can be a thankless endeavor, right? You hear all the complaints, but rarely is somebody sending you kudos. So I definitely want to say thanks to everybody who has sent the kind words. It's motivating to keep chugging along. Travis, I burned through that way faster than I expected. I think I was like a little bit nervous, so I was just talking a million miles an hour. A few more items that I thought of, I forgot to cover. We just added China today. We had somebody who had asked for that frequency, so that got added. So I thought it'd be fun to run a simulation in China. One other feature that I think is super slick, and I always forget to demonstrate, but if we go pick off a wallet, and I don't know, let's go grab. So now that we have a single hotspot inspected, you can navigate to the wallet. And if we navigate to that wallet, we can see that it has 2 hotspots. And if we go over to our layer manager, we can see the inspected wallet is yellow. And so if we zoom out, we can turn off our online hotspots and we can see where exactly that wallet is, which again, from a strategic perspective, trying to see kind of who's moving into your particular region. If you're trying to be really tactical about that, you might care about that a lot. So let's see, I think this one has a lot.
And this ties into another one of your features, which is the email, which I think is one of the best features of this, and it has nothing to do with the GUI here, right? I mean, it's I will get an email whenever a new hotspot pops up in the area of one of my hotspots, and from there, then I can trace through on Wallet, right?
Yep. And the those emails, I touched on it quite a bit at the beginning, but they happen for any of your track devices where there's hotspots being indexed. So your regions and your placements will both get an email if one is added or removed, which is certainly handy from kind of a tactical perspective.
Yeah. Well, or if you're just like monitoring a placement or a location, and it may not be a great location at that point, right?
Sure.
But as things evolve, as more things kind of get placed out here, maybe that is going to be a nicer place to put a hotspot, and so you can literally just actively watch that. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and certainly from the reward scale perspective, right? So tracking your own hotspots, you're not going to, the official app is not going to tell you if your reward scale changes. It's going to tell you if it goes online or offline. But if somebody comes and drops a hotspot near yours and it changes your reward scale, if you can't get a hold of that person, via Helium hosts or whatnot, to try to collaborate and figure out like, hey, is there a way we can reposition these? You might just have to move your own in order to get your reward scale back up. And so I think those notifications are certainly valuable to know when your reward scale has been changed by somebody else.
Absolutely. And it could be changed, for the better if you're a lone wolf and someone puts, a deployment out there. So
absolutely. The wallet feature here that I kind of found one while we were talking. So this wallet has 498 hotspots, a few of them here in the valley near me. But if we zoom out, we can see this is one of those, really big wallets that probably belongs to a national host. So I don't know why. I think that's such a cool feature to be able to just see that wallet's hotspots. And if you wanted to, up at the top, you can click track all hotspots. I'm certainly not going to do that on this wallet. But it will, assuming that your plan allows for the amount of hotspots in the wallet, it will add all of them in one click, which people who have a lot of hotspots and don't want to go through and track them all individually, of course, they just click on their own wallet and then click track. Actually, so if you go back and you watch, there was a question about what the Glamos provides. Go back and watch the last Helium hacks. Slavin goes into great detail about what the Glamos does, and no, it doesn't just provide you lat long. You could certainly get that from your phone. It's doing much more than that. So rather than duplicating all that content here, just go back and watch the one from last week. Somebody in the chat asked about the digital Cedar Wolf wallet. So this is the wallet that holds digital Cedar Wolf, not Wolf. Yeah, so whoever wanted to see it, there you go. And then AP, I just heard you talking about the backlog. So if you open up the user dropdown or the user menu, there is a roadmap where I have a public Trello board. All the features that are, kind of suggested by the community, I keep there. And of course, I have another one that's private with kind of like the technical stuff that nobody wants to see. But I'm always excited to hear your guys' feedback and ideas. And I also have on that public Trello board, I have voting open. so that you guys can go and vote on the features that you'd like to see prioritized. So
Cool.
you kind of have a say in, you know, what features end up getting worked on sooner than later. So definitely thanks for the reminder on that, AP. Support here in the user dropdown also opens up a little support modal here at the bottom. If you need to get some help officially with Helium Vision, please use that over the Discord channel. The Discord channel doesn't actually send me notifications, so sometimes if I don't keep an eye on it, it goes a long time without getting a response. Versus
That doesn't go through your support team, or
you're looking at the support. No, actually, I'm glad you bring that up, though. We are actively looking at adding customer support, customer success, right, to the team. I would much rather be focused on developing new features for the product and for you guys, and have somebody else who can focus making sure you guys get help when you need it. So it's a little bit of a balancing act here early on, right? We're just getting started. We haven't even been launched a full 2 months yet. So, you know, it's just been full steam ahead. So
sure. I know you wear a lot of hats, you know, and you kind of have had to, you know, up to this point, but that's great to see you're bringing someone, you know, on board to help you out there.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, I want to continue to do a good job at customer service. And I know that the larger the product gets and the more customers we have, that becomes a juggling act. And so I don't want the development to suffer, nor do I want the customer service experience to suffer. So I hope thus far people have felt like I've been responsive and done a good job when there's been things that need attention, but certainly looking to add somebody to the team so that I can breathe a little bit. I'm sure there are additional questions. I burned through that super fast. So I'm happy to field questions and demonstrate things if there's anything I didn't cover. You guys are way more shy than the community call.
Right? No, anyone feel free to unmute and just kind of jump in at this point to do kind of a QA here.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, Alex, just what specifically maybe are some little previews you guys could give us of the line of sight updates that might be happening? I know you guys are doing some new
Okay.
integrations there.
I dropped a link into the chat there with a fairly old image of a path profile plot, and it's showing, there you go, thank you. It's showing more than what you see in many of these tools. It's not just a point to point, it's showing the Fresnel zone, which is the dashed line that's underneath. And you've got more metadata, probably too much metadata actually for Helium. There's more than you need there. When we implement that in Helium Vision, there'll be clutter on top of the terrain there, so there'll actually be buildings. And so you'll have a much richer path tool than a lot of the free tools that are out there on the web, because there's a lot of these free path tools. A lot of vendors have them on their websites, but they're useful up to a point. But if you want to do urban stuff, then you need to have that clutter.
This is great. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that.
No worries.
Awesome.
So I had a question. Yeah, I was wondering if you can maybe elaborate a little bit on the type of materials that really affect the blockage of the radio frequency, you know, that affects that clear line of sight, or anything that bounces it or alters the, you know, the range or the trajectory of it. Anything you could share?
Sure. Attenuation in building materials varies greatly depending on the material, and it's a pretty big subject, but in simple terms, you've got different types to concern yourself with, and the big perpetrators out there are bricks and concrete. And as you might expect, solid building materials attenuate radio signals more than permeable building materials such as wood or natural materials. So concrete's the killer. That's the one to watch out for. And the density of concrete varies, but at this wavelength, you were talking 915 megahertz here. it's going to attenuate by over sort of 10 dB just in one concrete block. If you have a building with multiple walls with concrete blocks in, that's going to kill your path loss completely.
And from my experience, glass walls can also make big effect on radio signal, and that can make really big problems also. And this is a situation where you need to make testing, and any RF simulation cannot give you precise data, which can be really useful for you. So any location need to be tested, and you will know better how it will work. So
Thank you. That was really
thank you,
informative.
Simon, one of the things we're going to be doing with the Glamos walker is actually using the data that comes off the walker to improve the RF simulations. So you end up with those real world measurements, and you then look at what the simulation told you, and there's going to be a delta. There always is. And the delta, let's say for argument's sake, is 20 decibels. Then Nick can then turn a dial and play with the material attenuation and make that delta smaller.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really great idea to have when we go out and we test, and try to have a nice log of that information and how it's affected by each material or something like that. I think that might be useful.
Yeah, it will be helpful if we can get some related documentation in there, because some of the settings, unless you're familiar with RF, you may not really know which settings you want to be choosing. And certainly, I'm no RF expert. I'm like beyond novice when it comes to the actual RF stuff. Which huge thanks to Alex for both being here with us today to back me up on all this stuff, but then also for being so supportive of my work and helping to get Cloud RF integrated into Helium Vision so smoothly. So big thanks to Alex.
No, thank you, Nick. It was a pleasure integrating it with you, and we've got more to do.
Absolutely. All right.
Now, quick question on the Cloud RF, the simulation. How do you differentiate between an indoor unit and outdoor unit?
That's a very good question, Devin. It's difficult. Cloud RF is an outdoor tool, I would say. Indoor modeling is a very complex problem on another level, because you need to worry about all the building materials within the room, within the house. So if you need to budget for a wall, if you can't site your hotspot outside your building, then you can still do that. You can factor that into your link budget by putting it at the TX or the RX loss within the simulation. So in the Helium Vision interface, that would be the antenna gain. So you could actually manipulate that to budget for the fact that you might have a wall that you can't do anything about.
And what kind of models do you use? Monte Carlo simulations for this?
It's not ATOL, it's our own engine. It's called Sleipnir, and it uses the irregular terrain model, which is ideal for this frequency at 915 megahertz.
Okay.
There's a question from John G about the legend, the color gradient, and whether or not it could be customized for some colorblind folks. And I would say absolutely reach out to me, and we'll sort something out for that. There's Cloud RF supports the ability to do custom palettes, and that's certainly something that I would entertain. So just shoot me a DM and we'll chat about that. Jerry, I don't even know what an optimizer is. All right. Yeah, absolutely. You guys can send me messages in Discord, or you're welcome to use the support ticketing system that's within the application. But yeah, I'm excited to hear, ideas, feedback. Certainly, if you have any issues, I want to hear about that.
I just wanted to say thank you both very much for being here and presenting on this. This is fantastic. I've been a huge fan of Cloud RF for a number of years, and it's great to have you on the show, Alex, and you as well, Nick. Talking about the Helium Vision. I think that this is something that anyone who's using a hotspot or rolling these things out needs to take a look at this, needs to get an account, needs to play around with this, optimize their locations based off of it, and it's going to serve them well. It's this is absolutely fabulous what you've been able to build up here. And like I say, thank you for being so receptive on input from the community and from myself. I know I bugged you night and day for weeks now, but I honestly appreciate that. So thank you very much. And I hope everyone who was able to attend this call takes a look at this, and anyone who is watching this, later on YouTube, go look at it. It's cool stuff. You need this. If you're playing with Helium, you need this. So take my word for it.
Yeah, and in addition to thanks to Alex for all the support. Huge thank you to Travis as well. I mean, the device integration with Glamos and getting that ready for today's demo was definitely much in part to Travis, both helping in testing, but also shepherding along the process to make sure that we had everything wired up right. So, huge thanks to Travis as well, and for having us on and letting us share.
And to the entire Helium team, because there was a lot of back and forth in order to, to get everything in place, that we could actually talk about this tonight. So, huge shout out. Cool. And so $5, what does that get me? If I sign up and then cancel the same day, I just, $5, where does that get me with Helium Vision?
Yeah, so I'm pulling up the pricing. I actually don't know off the top of my head exactly what the plan limits are for that. But at that point, early on, we had kind of like gated features by tier. And at this point, you get all the features at every tier. The only difference is the number of objects you can track. So at the $5 plan, you can track 5 hotspots, 1 region, 5 devices, and 2 placements. And then you'll also get 10 RF simulations and 500 API requests for the calendar month. And it resets at the first of each month.
And then I can tack on, if I run out of RF sims, I can tack those on, just kind of ad hoc, right?
Absolutely. You can buy RF simulation credits on demand, and somebody asked again, and I'll confirm again, they roll over, they don't expire, so if you buy some and then after the month ticks over, they're still going to be there. And if your plan has simulation credits available, it will use your monthly plan first before it subtracts from your on-demand quota, so that you're basically hanging on to the ones that are going to roll over the longest. And one of the mods, AP, he had actually asked about the potential to add additional API requests as well. Like, hey, some of us might want to go do some war driving and throw a mapper in the back and, just nail the API. So I'll entertain that idea as well if there's some more interest in being able to separately bump up your API requests.
Awesome. Well, Nick, thanks, man. And just hit me up later tonight. And if you don't have at least like 50 signups from this call, then I'm going to start putting a password on this call going forward, because I don't think people are really understanding what they get out of this call. So.
But hey, no. Thanks again so much, Travis. It's been great working with you, and thanks for everybody who showed up. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you guys.
Yeah. So everyone, I guess we're gonna, we've run, I guess, an hour over once again. We're gonna have to start calling this the Helium Happy Hours. But thank you everyone who showed up tonight. And I know it was an hour earlier. I hope it worked out a little better for a lot of the folks over in EU, especially. Let me know. Just hit up on the Discord channel. I'm T over there. Let me know what you thought of the new time. There is a new link. It's posted in events, and it was in general. But once you register for this, you're good for the next 20 meetings, unless you don't sign up to Helium Vision, and then I'm putting a damn password on the thing. So, but like I said, it was great seeing everyone. Thank you very much, Nick, Alex, for the presentations. And I hope to see everyone back again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. An hour earlier than the old one, but I'll see you then. Take care, folks. Be safe.
Thanks, Travis.
Thanks,
Thank you, Nick.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. All right.